Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal-Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha. I head up brand awareness at Reveal. Most weeks, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live where I get the chance to chat with luminaries and in eDiscovery and related areas. I say most weeks because next week we're going to have a slew of episodes, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, all broadcasting from Legal Week in New York. Please join us then. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. Our guest today is Jeremy Schaper. Jeremy is the partner and co-founder of BlueStar and also serves as the company's Chief Technology Officer. Jeremy, welcome.
Hello, how are you today?
Doing well. So glad to have you here with us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
It's something to distract me from our 8-degree weather, which I know you are not suffering through down there.
I won't complain, although today we are in the 50s, which is,
just about the same thing for you.
Really. I'd be wearing the same vest you're wearing outside right now.
That's right. Well, I would like to start our discussion with a little bit about you, about how you got into all of this, and then what you do today. So what brought you to this world?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the whole show, but I'm going to summarize it here. I ended up in the technology department at Winston & Strawn, and then through there started supporting lit support. And from there, I met a friend, Greg Estes, who started a company, and we joined together with Lisa Rosen to form BlueStar. Lisa and Greg, we all worked hard, and our main effort at the beginning was concordance and summation, if we remember those, and they're still around. I think I have come across having to load into concordance in the past year, but after that, we always looked for the next bit of software that's out there, and we were, I think, number 3 or so with Clearwell. And so Clearwell was one of those that was actually an investigation tool. And we helped them, and I'm sure others helped them too, to make it more of a lit support or litigation readiness tool plus production tool. So from there, I mean, we also adopted Reveal. We have Reveal. We also have Story Engine, which is Relativity AI. We've got other review platforms that we've embraced through the years. We've been in business for 20 years, so that says something. And we're continuing to move forward and try to use whatever tools we can see that will help us grow our company and navigate this landscape.
Well, 20 years is something to congratulate you for. There are plenty of folks off one side of the road or the other, so to speak, who never made it close to that far.
Yeah, it seems like a blur right now, to be honest with you.
I can believe that. I'd like to ask you about a topic that is very much in the news today, very much a topic of speculation generally and within the world of eDiscovery as well, which is ChatGPT. Where is it going? What are we doing about it? What should we think about it?
Yeah, I mean, the joke I have, and I think my wife's gone right now, I actually am not the most eloquent when it comes to writing cards, right? So, I can definitely solve a math problem. Got some mathematical reasoning, but when it comes to putting down my feelings, it just didn't come through the way I wanted it to. So we've been using ChatGPT to generate some content and to look into how it might change the way we even represent ourselves on our website. And boy, it wrote a nice little note to my wife. I got some kudos for that. I don't know. She probably won't watch this, so I don't have to worry about her
You
checking
may
that
be
out.
safe.
Yes, but it was spot on. You know, I gave it a little history, and boy, it just nailed it. So, yeah, controversies there. I used to be a middle school math teacher, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of the teachers early on when I started teaching, you can't let them have a calculator. You can't let them have a calculator. I said, that's not what I'm teaching. I'm not teaching them how to use a calculator. I'm teaching them how to solve problems. You know, so if this is another tool, and I guarantee that it's going to be one of those things we're going to have to embrace, maybe not like the calculator. I'm just kind of spitballing there, but my thought is there are going to be uses for it, and I don't think there's a lot of ways to really keep it down. It's more of how can we embrace it, and what can we see future-wise. Like you said, there may be some problems with e-discovery, and you know, the people are brushing on that, definitely touching on it right now. For me, I do see it as something we definitely have to pay attention to. You can see that Bing came out of the woodwork. I'm sorry, I don't mean to down Bing, but it's one of those things that I haven't used, but it's definitely something that has embraced this technology. I know that Google kind of saw the writing on the wall. I don't know if they were just sitting back and happy with what they had, and then saw this and definitely sent up a red flag. So it's definitely changing, and definitely something that we're going to see evolve.
So there are two different sides to addressing ChatGPT. One is how we might, on the delivery side, if you will, make effective use of it in platforms as part of a service offering and the like. And then the other is, what do we do with GPT generated content when it's part of the data that's there through discovery? Which side do you want to tackle first? And then we'll go to the second side.
Well, I think that I see uses in it for possible QC, you know, eventually to pinpoint more documents and to help us evolve our review, just like just like technology assisted review, adding it into that fold in a way that it can help us target and also find errors in maybe our production, potentially. Or help us evolve our thinking when it comes to what we're looking for, maybe development of search terms, or helping us percolate more maybe responsive documents to the reviewers. And all that's kind of there, but maybe this is just another avenue to kind of assist with that.
And what about when it comes in as content and discovery?
I've already seen, the thing about it, and maybe this is something that they'll work on too, but it's so perfect, right? I mean, when you write, there's no grammatical errors. I know maybe my wife was questioning me for that, because there's definitely issues, not necessarily bad, but writing wise, it tends to be pretty perfect when it comes to its syntax and its use of verbs and adjectives and whatnot. So my thought is there is something to say about the perfect writing and being able to identify it, is where I'm going. So there is some possible algorithms down the road that would be able to identify the data that way. Or if someone is using it, giving a reference to it, right? So I know there's going to be some gray area there for sure.
Yeah, so more questions than answers, definitely, with that. I mean, there's now a new version out, ChatGPT 4. I haven't even had a chance to look at that yet. Have you?
No, I do see that they are now offering a subscription, and they've been doing that, but they're really starting to push that, getting you a taste of it, and now you can get. Is it a per word, or I forget what it is, but there's a charge per something, not per gig, whatever we charge, but per something, and I can't remember what the unit is. They want to charge you pennies on.
Now they've got us hooked.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to go with it. Is if you really want to use it, you've got to pay for it eventually.
Well, let's move from the still largely speculative to what we really do need to deal with regularly. A large part of what happens today still is communications, email communications, and related things that show up in two platforms in particular. Office, or O365 or M365, whichever nomenclature you prefer to use, and then Google Workspaces. What do we do with all of that?
Yeah, and that's something from my experience the last at least maybe 5 years, I've just seen a movement, and it's nothing, it's nothing surprising. Microsoft 365, which they've just rebranded that the last 6 months to Microsoft 365. They keep changing the information once you get into their eDiscovery module. Now it's Purview, but you'll see other names probably change. Just keeping up with that can be somewhat difficult as to their updates and changes. I do see that companies are moving towards that. And then I'd say second would be workspaces, Google Workspaces. Those two are prevalent when I'm assisting in collections or review. And what I do find is that the way things are changing and the way that the companies, depending on the size of the company, they need help. They need help with Google Vault or the eDiscovery Purview in Microsoft 365. It's a huge need. Not to mention with Microsoft cutting jobs, there's less assistance with that and less consultants available to help with that. So I do see that being a very big need with regards to our as a provider, our skill set. We need to be able to understand the ins and outs of those and what we can get out of them. And the level that our client has, there's different licensing per. So when you get on a call and they tell you they have Microsoft 365, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to export data out of their eDiscovery module. Same thing with Google Workspaces. They might just have the Business Starter versus the Business Plus, and just throwing out the names. And one will let you view Google Vault, one will let you actually export it. So there's a lot of layers there, but it's understanding. And then on top of it, what kind of wrappers are they putting on top of it to make it a little bit more robust in finding data and exporting data? One of the big gotchas with both of those programs is running terms on those programs might not be your best case scenario. They don't index everything, right? So when you're trying to find data, when you're doing date filtering, that's great. You're looking for specific custodians, that's great. Maybe some high-level searches to pull data, but understanding what happens to the data it can't search, right? Just keep that in mind.
So when you say they don't index everything, what is it that they do not index?
So Microsoft has a whole list on, if you go dig into their support on their site, they have a whole list of items they don't index. And one would be large files. Anything over a certain size, it's not going to index. Certain file types, it won't index. And so, but what it does nicely is it identifies the items it can't index. So therefore you can go, all right, fine, I can't search this bit, but I can export it out and then ask the client what they want to do with this, because I can't run the terms on it in Microsoft 365, but I could maybe take it out and index it and search it for them with a tool that we have. So
does that then mean that for Purview, that same search challenge exists?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah. Mm-hmm. And just one example might be non-searchable PDFs. That's an easy one, right? Stuff that's been scanned in that doesn't have text in it. It's not going to search that. So therefore, that document might get lost if it had something in it that you really wanted. It hit on a term, but it doesn't have the text in there. It visually hit on the term. So that would be an item that could get exported out and indexed and searched with another tool.
When people come to you then for help in these two areas, it sounds as if part of what they need assistance with is helping them better understand, given whatever license they have, what the capabilities are with that license. And then second, it sounds like there are some collection, processing, and indexing challenges they deal with. Am I correct?
Definitely, yeah. And then the one thing that you touched on there is a lot of times we'll be working with their inside counsel who maybe just knows they have Microsoft 365. And then the next meeting would be with IT to then hopefully an expert in what they have with Microsoft 365 to discuss those challenges and the level of how you want to attack it, as opposed to making a plan before you actually have that meeting. It's a better effort.
What would the next step then be after that meeting?
So about 50% of the time, they give us a login to their system so that we can create the legal holds, we can create the searches and the exports and the downloads. So all that can happen in our secure system, as opposed to having it happen through their IT, maybe a screen share, they pull it down, then they have to upload it. Now you got all those hops of data, right? So we lobby for that user. There are many times security was not going to let us do that because it is sort of a it's a pretty big leap to give someone external an actual login to their system.
When you are having then those discussions with the in-house counsel, with IT and IT security, and they have those concerns, how do you help them better get to where you think they need to be?
Yeah, they're the ones that are sort of on the fence need some persuasion when it comes to the security on our side. So what we have is a nice list of items that we've put in place and security that we've put in place to help them feel better about giving us the access. And if we aren't at their level, then that's something that they would then say, okay, no, let's just do a screen share and we'll do it together. As long as there's oversight, and that's the key that I would always say, not letting IT do it on their own, having someone like me or one of our experts on the phone with them so that we can then say that we were there and saw exactly what they did and actually led them through it, so that if it does come up and there is some kind of question about the collection, we've got it covered.
Once data has been collected, assuming you've gotten that through that process, what comes next?
So, of course, there's a lot of layers. We need to know the custodian names because they don't always match up with the PSTs that come out of Microsoft 365. But we'd organize it and then process it for review. And then if they want us to, if we did do search terms and there is some non-searchable data, we could then pull that in also, index that, and run the terms on that data. But it really depends on the needs of the client. They might have other items where they've got priority custodians. We've got to talk about processing specs and, what their end game is. It isn't just take it and process it, right? We need to understand what they really want to achieve and what they need to get to. So we'll have some strategies for them.
Well, what are some of the biggest challenges you see them run into, and then how do you help them with those challenges?
Well, definitely wanting to run terms, let's say on a Google Workspace. I wouldn't run search terms on Google Workspace because it isn't one that identifies the non-searchable data, and there is definitely non-searchable data. So that's a challenge right there. If they're in Google Workspace, I definitely would say, let's just do date filtering. Let's target specific custodians, but definitely not run search terms in there. That's not what I would recommend. Challenges would be the quantity of data, getting through that data once they get the data into the system, or we're putting in some kind of preliminary state where we can run searches on it, helping them to achieve. And hopefully the one challenge they have is I sometimes will get search terms and I always ask, I just want to be proactive. Are these search terms okay? Are they verified? Are they terms that we can use? Has the other side bought into these terms? Because and that might not be an aspect. Maybe they don't care, but I just want to make sure that they understand that terms are not bulletproof. I hate to use that term. They're not rock solid. Sorry, they're not rock solid. You're going to miss stuff no matter how many iterations of terms you decide to run. So that's a challenge.
How do you help them with that part? I think of, especially earlier on, some of the meetings I had with clients and others where, in essence, what they wanted to do was put everyone in a conference room with a whiteboard and then come up with a set of search terms.
Yeah, that's the worst, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that. I always one of my big questions at the beginning is I know everybody runs terms. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people do. Majority come up with search terms. They run them back and forth between both sides, both parties. And then when they come to us, they say, okay, these are the terms we agreed upon. I'm thinking, okay, wait, you haven't even tested these terms. But I think that at this point, I probably nothing I can do about it, right? But I will let them know, hey, is there an opportunity to test these before you agree, put the stamp on them? And, many times there is, and they can go back and forth and they can look at the results, do some maybe testing on certain search terms, see if there's some huge false positives that are outliers where you've got, just this huge quantity. Maybe you could narrow that term propose a new term. So there is a back and forth before you actually lock in on the search terms that you plan on using.
If you have the opportunity to help someone craft search terms before they've already locked things in with the other side, what sort of approaches do you suggest folks use?
Well, I wouldn't know the documents the way they do, right? So I want to get a list from my client first. And a lot of times it might be very rough, right? Where they may not understand syntax. They might also have gotten terms from the other side that don't have the right syntax for your system. And you have to look at that and really verify that all the characters are correct. There's no terms that aren't searchable that maybe need to be indexed, that kind of thing. Really scrutinize what they give you. And then hone the terms and send them back to them and say, here's my take on what you just gave me. I do see some issues there. I see, for example, they're searching the custodian name against the custodian's data. That's probably not a good term at that point. So we talk about that. And so you just have to really look at the terms. You can't just take what they give you and run them. Once you get those and they take a look after you've done your syntax change and possibly suggestions for the terms, then run them and give them some reports. I want them to get in and look at them, but half the time they just look at the reports. And all they look at are the numbers and say, this one's too high.
Right.
We need to change that one right there.
Because what? They've got the Enron database and they're searching for Enron.
Something like that, yes. Right. And it's so how can we fix that? I said, well, let's look at those. Let's see why they're coming up like that. Mm-hmm. For example, I had a search term that came to me this last week, and there was some URLs in the extracted text that had all kinds of weird characters in it, right? And they were looking for the word AUTH, auth. Well, that's in a lot of places. And They came to me and like, what are all these documents? And I had to really look deep. And then they're not at surface. You don't see it, but you see the hyperlink being extracted from it. So I was able to find that for him and said, okay, well, there's your issue. So there's a lot more to it. And obviously we could go on and on about search terms because many of probably my colleagues and other vendors would say that, they're not perfect, and they definitely aren't. There's other ways to get to the documents, but I do find that it's more than 50% that I get search terms.
What then are some of the other ways to get to the documents?
Well, there, and even Relativity AI will give you search term suggestions, other terms that you could use other than the word you're using, right? So there's other platforms that will do search term suggestion, so that maybe you think of it this way, but it's also being represented another way in the data. So there's more analytics that can be done to then help you broaden your terms. Maybe you don't want to broaden them though. I don't know.
So much is strategy as well. Yeah. Let's turn to another topic, and a vexing one for many, which is the whole world of short messages. It's one thing to search through email content. Dealing with short messages, a very different thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's definitely coming up more and more. We can list them all, right? WhatsApp, Slack, definitely just text messages on a phone, basic text messaging on the phone. All that stuff is being used. Teams messaging, that's really being promoted more so than people using their phones to message each other, right? They want to capture it and be able to hold on to it and find it and export it out. It's been a definite change, and people are trying to figure this out. When we first started working with this years ago, it was, here's your Excel spreadsheet of all the chats. Here they are. And if you look at it, there's no way to group them sometimes. Some of them would do grouping, some of them wouldn't. So one text message on its own is useless usually. You really can't get what you need until you see the full conversation. When I say full conversation, I don't mean the full thread. I'm talking about just the conversation that happened that's meaningful in that thread, right? So, and I think we talked about this before, but what makes the document, right? And that's what all of us want, a document. We want an email, we want an attachment, we want an e-doc, we want a document that we can look at and that is responsive and move on. Oh, there's attachments, let's include the family, boom. So that's what we want, and we're trying to fit text messages into that mold. And what I've seen, the programs I've used, it's you make a choice. You make a choice when you start. Some of them you can make a choice after you bring it in. but you make a choice on where you want your breaks. Is it 24 hours? Is it a week? Is it a month? How long do you want that thread to be represented in the data? All right. Instead of each message being its own unit, you're combining them to make a document, right? And then you'll find if there's attachments in there, the attachments will follow. So they're getting, I hate to say attachments, but the media that's in the thread will follow as attachments so that you can see them maybe larger than just the thumbnail within the bubbles.
So what do you think of that approach of trying to, in essence, retrofit short messages and their related content into the structures we've created to deal with email?
It's problematic for sure. Yes, because I do have a thread with my wife. I bet it goes back 5 years for sure. And there are conversations that happen. And let me tell you, I'm pretty quick at responding, but I might not respond till the next day, maybe, or maybe a week later. I usually catch it if I do that. But that thread lasted for 3 days, maybe, because we came back and we took some break. We took a break, came back to the same topic, took a break, came to the same topic. And maybe we talked about something in between. So that's where we're going to have our problems. And honestly, it's tough for me to figure out an answer for that. I know there are many technical minds working on this right now, for sure. Trying to figure out how to group these. Is it done once it's brought in? Is there a way to use analytics to figure out maybe that this is the topic and they're talking about this and it should stick together? I don't know the answer at this point. I know that from my experience, I've used things like Message Crawler to compile RSMF or whatever, any kind of 24-hour thread, to pull those together and bring those into like a Reveal or another review platform to then review those in the 24-hour thread. Is it perfect? Definitely not, but you would most likely get a conversation, but it might happen later too. And you might have to group those by review.
So let's do a mind exercise here. Given that what you have access to now in terms of the technology to deal with short messages falls short, so to speak, what would your ideal solution look like? And let's assume that anything is technically possible. Don't worry about whether it actually can be done.
Now, one thing I have to say, George, is it's come a long way since we first started messing with this stuff.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it has come a long way, but it's definitely not.
But let's push it even farther. Where would you like to see it?
I think what I said before is being able to group the conversation that's being had around a specific event, story, whatever it is, being able to pull those together, compile those in one printable document. I hate to say document, right, but one file that then I can produce, package it in a way that it's all together, whatever is available in the universe of text messages, being able to pull those together in a meaningful way.
So you'd have then, if I'm hearing correctly, you would have a magic package button.
Yeah.
And you could provide it whatever criteria you might have in mind.
That's right.
Give it those criteria, and it would come back to you with the perfect package that would contain all the pieces of communication that are needed for that, and something extra if that was needed to get a full enough picture, and all the other components around that in one nice, neat piece. And I assume then, you don't want that piece to look like an Excel spreadsheet, do you?
No, it should be in that. I feel like my clients want to see a communication bubble format with the media, whatever's there, and then if they need to see the media, it'd be nice if they could just click on it. It would get big, as opposed to having to look down in the list. I know some tools actually do that, where you see it and it's linked and it'll pull up the full media, whether it's a document or a video or a picture or whatever. Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a good one. You're going to have that ready next week?
Maybe not by Tuesday, possibly Thursday. What do you think?
All right.
I don't think
it'd be a good time to unveil it. It'd be next week, right?
No. I don't think I'm not quite ready. But maybe in the not too distant future. Who knows?
Yes.
Well, Jeremy, thank you very much for joining us. Jeremy is
Oh, my kids made me wear this. Come on.
There we go.
I am feeling lucky today. They wouldn't let me leave the house. I didn't leave the house, but they wouldn't let me come into my office without a shirt.
They wouldn't let you turn the camera on without that.
No. The other thing is they had two shirts. They had one that was a Grogu, and I told them, no, that's not happening. I'll wear this one.
Probably better this one.
Yes.
Well, Jeremy, thank you very much for joining us today. Jeremy is the Chief Technology Officer at BlueStar Case Solutions. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, George. Have a great weekend.
You too.